Hello, everyone. This is Carolyn Chen with the County Council. Just testing everybody's computer and phones to see that you can hear me. We will be starting in 3 minutes, so make sure that you can hear clearly. Thanks so much. Hello, everybody. This is Carolyn Chen. I'm with the County Council. I'm hoping that everybody can hear me. Right now, everyone is on mute, so I can't hear you, but I can see you on my screen. I just wanted to thank you so much for attending this webinar about the Community Grants Information Workshop. What we'll be doing today is going over the main slide presentation that has been given out to numerous community grants workshops around the county. This is the last one. It's online, which is also recorded, so you'll be able to view this in the future if you are not able to see the whole thing. Also, I have attached the handout, the PDF of this presentation to GoToWebinar, the software we're using. If you look on the right-hand side in your control panel, there is a section called Handouts, which is right above Questions, and you'll be able to download the PDF of this presentation, which is also available online. Also, under the handouts is a question section, and that's where you can send your questions to me as you remember or note them as you go along. I will receive them, and then at the end of our presentation, I will answer the questions as they come in so everybody can hear them. Okay, and I think if you have any questions or something's wrong, there is a little hand icon that is on your control panel to the left under the mute and the full screen button. That hand icon, if you click on it, you'll raise your hand and I'll know that you need some attending to. Okay, so we're going to go through the slides right now. Hold on. And moving forward. Great. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here for this webinar. This is the same presentation that was given at the other workshops. So if the bullets are not relevant, it's because I want to make sure that the information is consistent. We do need you to check in. So checking in would be registering for this webinar. And if you are on right now, I actually know your email address. This is important. We'll be adding your email to our grants update email list after this presentation. There are no physical handouts to this presentation. Instead, the PDF of this presentation is on your control panel to the right under handouts. You can download that PDF. There are also two websites that you should be familiar with. There's a county executive website and a county council website. They can be accessed through the bit.ly links right here, bit.ly/execgrants and bit.ly/council grants. The council grants website will really be the hub for all the information that you need in order to apply. And we ask that you hold questions after the presentation. Just send me a message through your portal if you have any questions, and we'll answer them at the end. So just to give an overview of the people, the team that is responsible for the community grants process, there are three people. There's Joshua Waters from the Office of Management and Budget. He runs the county executive grant review process. There's me, Carolyn Chen. I'm the council grants manager and legislative analyst over at the county council, and Mark Hodge, who is the special assistant to the chief operating officer of Health and Human Services. You will be dealing with Mark during the contracting end after you are awarded a grant. So in terms of the application process and review, that's Josh and myself. Next, this presentation will be addressing general questions about the process for those of you that are first-time appliers or veteran appliers. These are the questions we'll be answering. What are community grants? What has changed since last year? How and when do I apply? What can I apply for? What is the criteria and review process? When will I find out if I am awarded a grant? How do I enter into a contract with the county? What about next year? And what if I have more questions? So what are community grants? Montgomery County partners with the nonprofit community to provide services to residents. Our goal is to deliver culturally competent services in a cost-effective manner. We want to reach more communities that may not have access to county services, and we also want to make an impact in the next 12 months with this grants program. Last year in fiscal year 2019, we awarded $12.2 million in community grants to 249 programs. Not specific organizations, but programs. So while you guys were away this past year, we have new leadership. We have a new county executive, Mark Elrich, and 4 new council members, which also helped us shape this grants process for this year. The Office of Legislative Oversight also released 2 reports that really shaped how we're running the grants review process this year. One is a community grants audit that was done for the last 5 years. If you go to this link, you'll be able to download the report itself, and also racial equity and government decision making. Also another report, you can go at this link, which is discussing how to change systems in order to achieve racial equity. Racial equity will be a priority on the county council and the county executive side this next year. So what we did before, for those of you that have applied for a grant before, we had 2 separate processes. We had executive grants, which was an administrative review by the Office of Management and Budget. And last year, we awarded $8.7 million to 231 programs. And the council grants process, which is a citizen review by a grants advisory group. And then last year, we granted $3.5 million to 134 programs. What are we doing for fiscal year 20? The county executive and the county council processes are now being coordinated together to streamline the application and review process. In December and January, our staff will be meeting to finalize the FY20 process so that we are coordinated going forward. And in the new year, we will begin the process for fiscal year 2021 and beyond. The goal is to eventually have a separate executive grants office that will run grants for the county year round so that anyone can walk into an office and be able to find out all the grants in the county that you are eligible for. So what is changing? There's going to be one online application for all community grant funds. For those of you that applied in the past, there's been two that you needed to submit, one to the executive, one to the county council, where you copy and pasted. We are now doing one online application for all community grant funds. That would be for the full 12.2 million that was given out last year. We will also have less application attachments and required documentation. The goal here is to streamline the application process. There's only a couple of attachments that are required, and I'll go over those in another slide. Next, we have increased categorization of programs. This is to address the diversity of the types and size of organizations that apply for community grants. In the past, we have categorized by what year you were established, as well as the program area your program was categorized in. We will now increase that to include how large your organization is in terms of your budget and how long your particular program has been funded by the community grants process or another public funding stream. The goal here is to separate programs that have been funded multiple years and to review them against the same size and comparable organizations budgets so that we can understand capacity and quality of education. For those that are smaller organizations with smaller budgets and therefore might not have as many different programs, we want to be able to review you guys against your peer group as well in terms of size and capacity to submit a grant application. In the past, when you received a grant, you needed to report back to us at a 6-month interview and interval and a 12-month interval. We will now be changing this for this upcoming fiscal year to a 12-month final outcome report only. On indirect cost guidance, there's been many questions about what can I put for administrative fees or fringe benefits for my organization. The guidance that we're using this year is a 10% administrative fee percentage to put in your program budget. That's if you do not have an already contracted rate with the county agency already. So if you have a 7.8 contracted rate with an agency in the county, please use that. If it's 22.5, please use that. But if you don't have any contract with the county and don't have an administrative rate that's been agreed upon, please just use 10% so that your application, there is no negative factor if you include an administrative fee. For the council grants process, which is the citizen review process, we will consolidate the in-person interviews. In the past, if you applied to multiple programs and for your organization, you had to come in for your 15-minute interview on multiple days with multiple review groups. Now we are going to do everything we can to make sure that the same review group reviews all of your organization's programs so that there's efficiency in understanding your organization and efficiency for you coming in and interviewing. Finally, we are recruiting a more diverse review panel than ever before. We're looking to 70 to 80 volunteers from all different backgrounds and education and industries. On January 15th, when this grant review group is appointed by the county council, a one-page slide will be published on the demographics of this group so you have a sense of where these reviewers are coming from, what's their background, where they work, where they live, so you can be better prepared for your Q&A. All right, the application process. This is just a large overview of what the whole process is. One, you will submit an online application. The application opened on December 5th, and the deadline is January 15th. From February to April, the review of your application will be done by the council and the executive. You will receive notification on March 15th or June, depending on where your program falls within the recommended budget of the county executive. You will then need to contract with a county agency on your award. It's important to note that grants are not grant funds that are dropped into a bank account. They are a contract with the county agency where you will need to be reimbursed for your expenses, which I'll go through in another slide. Finally, when you contract with your county agency, which can take anywhere from 60 to 90 days, you will then run your program and 12 months later submit an outcomes report to us. So who can apply? If you're a nonprofit organization with 501c3 status, you are eligible to apply. If your program serves county residents with services provided in the county, you are eligible to apply. This means that if you are an organization that is headquartered outside of the county or outside of the state or the country, that's okay as long as you serve county residents with services in the county. You must be in good standing with the state of Maryland, regardless of organization and location, which I will talk about in our next slide, and you must hold appropriate organizational insurance as determined by the contracting process. And this is general insurance that your organization should already have in order to operate here in the county. This is an article that was released in the Washington Post on August 3rd. It's about Prince George's County grant process. Through an audit, they found out that 21 organizations were not registered in good standing with the state of Maryland. And if they were not in good standing for over 18 months, they had to go through a forfeiture process for the grant funds they were awarded. So it's important to be in good standing with the state of Maryland. If you don't know what that means, please contact me and I can help you figure out if you are in good standing or not. It's important that you register with the state to do business within the state, regardless of where you're headquartered. So who cannot apply? Nonprofit organizations with any other 501c status cannot apply. Schools, colleges, or universities, companies or consulting firms, programs that include a religious message with the delivery of their services. The example that I've been using for this is that my mother is Buddhist, and at her temple, she's the one who chops the carrots for the vegan meal at lunchtime. In order to receive that meal, you have to go through the Buddhist service in the morning in order to get that meal. That would mean that program would be ineligible to apply for a community grant. Public funds cannot be used for services where a religious message is required in order to receive that service. And if you have any questions about that, please let me know. In addition, arts and humanities programs and English literacy programs are not eligible to apply because there are a separate fund within the county that funds these programs directly. Next, the council priorities for this year's grants process. Number one, the overall grants process hasn't changed. We are still an open grants process for any type of organization. As long as you have the basic eligibility requirements met, you can apply. We are trying to serve any disadvantaged county resident. We would like to encourage coordination and collaboration by a lead agency of a group of organizations. That's called the team application when you are looking at our application. We want to avoid duplication of services and increase efficiency in the delivery of services. So if there is a team application that you would like to submit, I'd encourage you to apply. We are looking for organizations and programs that exhibit cultural proficiency, use a racial equity lens in delivering services, and demonstrates commitment to organizational sustainability with diverse funding sources. That's the overall priority. Specific priorities that we'll be looking at this year, there's 4. The first one is disconnected youth. We are looking specifically for programs, before and after school programs for youth, especially those that do not qualify for extracurricular activities that require 2.0 at Montgomery County Public Schools. We are looking specifically for programs that address the youth that do not participate in extracurricular activities, and this is our definition of disconnected youth for this grant cycle. Next, council priority on education and workforce. We have many youth development programs that link education to college prep or admission into college. We're looking for specific programs that provide a linkage between education and directly into the workforce if somebody does not want to get a degree right away. The next priority is seniors. We're looking specifically at programs that address social isolation among senior populations. There are many types of senior programs that apply, but we just wanted to highlight the ones that are focusing on social isolation. This does not disqualify you to apply if you serve a different priority, but just wanted to highlight the ones that are important this year. And finally, climate change. This is new to the grants process that we wanted to align our community grants process with our climate change work group and our goal as a county to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2035. So if you are in a nonprofit organization that promotes sustainability, environmental impact, or actually does measure the production of greenhouse gas emissions, we'd like you to see your proposals and review them this year. So what's the criteria to apply for a community grant? Well, number one, there must be a public benefit to your program. Is your need clearly identified and demonstrated? Second, the strength of your proposal. Does your proposal outline the anticipated outputs and outcomes of your program? If you look at your application, there's a section in there for you to put the outputs and a section there to put the outcomes. A lot of organizations have trouble presenting this in a way that is clear, so please ask questions if this is not clear. The output of your program is typically the number of people, unduplicated people that you are serving with your program, and whether or not you break that down by a specific demographic, an age, or race, that's up to you. The outcome of the program is then what do you do with those outputs, those people, and how do you change their lives? What is the outcome of the program? How do you know that your program is successful? For very straightforward programs where, say, you're serving a meal, your output is 200 people came, and your outcome would be 200 people received a meal. Very simple. If you have a more complicated program with youth development that measures economic sustainability or academic eligibility, your output would be the number of students that you are serving with your program, and your outcome would be maybe their GPA increased by 0.5 over a 7-month period, or their attendance increased to over 80% in the last academic year. So it is specific to your program, and it's very important that this is clear and then linked to your budget. So the next part is the cost-benefit analysis. We need to know what outputs and outcomes are linked specifically to your program budget, and therefore what your program budget is in relation to the ask to the county. Finally, the strength of organization. How long have these services been delivered by your organization? What is your expertise? How do you know that your program works? So what do I need to submit for a community grant? You need to submit an online application, and we'll go through the portal and another slide. We will not accept an email or fax or mailed application. It must be submitted online. You will have a space to upload four things: a program budget, an organizational budget, financial statements, and board of directors information. If you are applying for a capital grant, you will also need to include your renovation plan and facility lease. But generally, everyone is applying for operational expenses, so you'll need a program budget. How much does your particular program with those links to outputs and outcomes cost? What is your organizational budget? How large are you overall? How much revenue, income, donations did you get last year? Financial statements. If you're large enough and you have audited financial statements, that's great. If you are small, we do need at least a one-page statement, a very simple statement of how much money or donations you received last year and what categories of expenses did you spend them on. So what happens when you receive a grant? As I noted before, the grant process is not a grant fund that gets dropped into your bank account. We are taxpayer dollars. We require documentation. We also require you to submit documentation that the services were delivered so that we can reimburse you for the services that you have delivered. That is difficult at times for small organizations to understand that you will need to front the cost of the program before getting reimbursed for it. It's important to know you will enter into a contract with a particular agency, most likely Health and Human Services. They manage around 90% of the contracts. You will then need to have insurance requirements reviewed. We'll have to go over the grant purpose to make sure that it's clear on what services will be delivered. And then you will receive a notice to proceed. That notice to proceed, after you've signed your contract, will be the date that you can start submitting invoices or receipts or documentation for the delivery for services. Anything before that date, before the contract is signed, cannot be submitted for reimbursement. This is very specific and important to understand. So if you have any questions, please let me know. So what do you need to remember today? The application portal is absolutely open. The deadline is January 15th at 4 p.m. I've said this before. Please do not submit your application in the last 45 minutes. So don't submit from 3:15 to 4 p.m. And that's because 75% of the applications, of the 400 applications last year, absolutely got submitted in the last 45 minutes. So I cannot guarantee that at 4:03, if the system crashes or if something happens in those last 45 minutes, that your application will be time-stamped. So we please ask just submit even an hour or 2 hours before, which will help with the flow greatly. Again, there is now one application per program, so there will be a streamlined process for you to access all funds, county executive or county council. You must be in good standing with the state of Maryland. You guys remember that. It's an annual registration fee of about $300 to do business in Maryland. We do need your actual legal name. In the application, you'll see now that there's two spaces, one for you to enter your legal name, so that's the one on the Articles of Incorporation, the one where you registered through the state of Maryland or the state that you're incorporated in, and there's another space for you to include your doing business name, doing business as name as your common name. This way, we won't get confused on which organization we're contracting with. We can only contract with your actual legal name. Please give us accurate contact email and phone. I cannot tell you how many times there's been a typo in the email or the phone number isn't quite right, and we won't be able to contact you for questions about your application, and especially if you've been awarded a grant. Finally, these are not grant funds. They are reimbursable expenses. You will need to front the money first to run your program and then submit an invoice, which can be on a monthly basis in order for you to receive reimbursement for the delivery of your services as your contract goes on. Finally, if you have more questions, there's a couple of ways you can get a hold of us. One, you can email executivegrants@montgomerycountymd.gov goes to Josh. council.grants@montgomerycountymd.gov goes to myself, Carolyn. You can call me. My phone number is 240-777-7935. And you can also meet with me. I have put my schedule online on a Doodle schedule. If you go to doodle.com/councilgrants, you can actually see my meeting availability from now through, I believe, January 9th, maybe the 14th. You can set a meeting with me to meet in the council office building. I'm on the 6th floor, or I will go to any site visits if you want to show me what's going on in your organization. This is very important for you to feel that you have access to all the information and that if you have any questions, they will get answered. So now I want to leave some time for questions, which you can do by entering in your questions to the right in your control panel. But before I do that, I just wanted to thank you all for what you do to improve our county. So thanks very much. It's 12:25 right now, so I'll take questions for the next half hour. And I'm looking right now. It looks like someone wanted to know whether or not I'm sharing the presentation. Yes, it's in the handouts section of your control panel, your GoToWebinar control panel. You can download that. I'll also be emailing it to everybody who registered for this. So let's see. Yes, so there was a new URL. So there's a question here about the registering for this particular webinar. There is a new URL to be in this webinar. That's because we oversubscribed in the first RSVP link for GoToMeeting, so we needed to upgrade to GoToWebinar. So if you are on this call right now, you are good. If you know someone who did not register for this new webinar link, like I said, this is being recorded so that someone can listen to it, and also you can download the presentation on our Council Grants website. Are there any other questions? Okay. Is the grant application file syntax the same as last year? So there's a couple of points I'd like to say on this. Number one, and I'm going to show this since we are online that you guys can see this. This is the Council Grants website. So when you type in bit.ly/council grants, this will take you to our homepage, which is really going to be where everything is listed. Here you can sign up for an information workshop, although this is the last one. You can learn about the listening sessions with the incoming county executive. You can request a meeting here. This is the doodle link. Our presentation is right here, so you can flip through it right here. You can download it. And then important dates are down here. The reason why I highlight this is that this is the link that you will click in order to apply online. When you click on this, it will take you here, which is our mcmdgrants.fluidreview.com grants portal. Here, there are a couple things that I want you to highlight. I want to highlight for you. One is that you will need to register an account here, so email, password, in order to gain access to the system. However, you can still get all the information on what the application looks like right here on the front page. We have a PDF and a Word template for you to download, which has all the questions already laid out for you. We have instructions for application attachments, those 4 that we talked about in the presentation. This is a link to all the evaluation criteria for what the reviewers will be looking at when they review your application. Here's another link to download the workshop presentation that you just heard, and here's the Excel program budget template. So yes, the question is whether the application file is the same as last year. It's still going to be a PDF document that gets converted after you submit online once you log in. And then you will still have an Excel template that you will submit online, which turns into a PDF. And then once you've done all those attachments, then you can submit. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, next question is, if we include a 10% admin fee line in the project budget, will that trigger an additional set of budget reporting requirements, such as paperwork that shows how the admin fee was calculated? No. So this is an important question on the guidance of the admin fee. You are not evaluated based on your admin fee, whether it's 10% or 12% or 20%. So what we're trying to do with this application is just have everyone either put a 10% admin fee if you don't have the documentation to show that you already contract that much, or if you contract with the county at, say, 15% with Health and Human Services and another contract, we want you to use what is already being contracted with the county that you've already agreed to. And that number changes depending on what your program is. So this is not an actual line item that we will be looking at in detail. It was in the past because we had a range of 7 to 33% of admin fee. So what we want is just to normalize it, have anyone submit a 10% so that it doesn't negatively affect your application when reviewers see the administrative fee. Hope that answers your question. Okay, great. Next question is staff time an allowable expense per the agreement? Absolutely. We actually like funding people more than anything. The reviewers like to see that there are specific people that are part of your organization that actually deliver the direct service to the participants or clients of your program. So yes, staff time is an allowable expense. Operational expenses, break it down for us. There is nothing specific in terms of type of fee that we don't allow you to apply for. The question after that is competitiveness. So yes, it is. It's always good to staff people because then we understand what is actually happening and being done. Okay, so in the past, another question. In the past, the portal accepted applications technically until 11:59 p.m. Is that still true, or will it actually cut off at 4 p.m.? So yes, the cutoff will actually be 4 p.m. The portal accepted applications till midnight before, and I think that was because we were worried about it being crashed. That was not the case last year. We cut that off at 4. It did not crash, but definitely a lot of applications came in. So yes, the application deadline is 4 p.m. Absolutely 4 p.m. Your application must be submitted by 4 p.m. It must be time stamped by 4. Anything after that will not be reviewed. Okay, next question. Good afternoon to you too. Since we're using a single application now, how will the executive and the council determine who will be funded? So going back to our slide about how this is working. Okay, so in the past, for those of you that reviewed that applied before, we had completely two different processes. We had 400 applications being reviewed by the executive administrative review process, and another 400 applications being reviewed by the citizen review by the grants advisory group at the council side. So what we saw was that of these 400 that were reviewed first, two-thirds of the funds were already determined while the council grants process was being reviewed in the middle. So therefore, at the end of the council executive grants process on March 15th, the council grants review team had 3.5 million to award to the same number of applications. We do not want that to happen again because the organizations that just apply for the council grants and not the executive, or have multiple applications on either side, you're not actually getting access to the full 12.2 million or whatever that number ends up being in the end. So what we're doing is having this done concurrently, but also in coordination, that all programs which are coming in on January 15th, so we know everybody's program on that date and we know everybody's need on that date, will be reviewed by both teams, and the decision on what gets funded first isn't a decision on what's more important. It's more of an administrative, logistical timing review on the county executive side versus review of the proposal. And I know that's confusing for organizations that have applied in the past. So please talk to me so I can speak directly to where your application was reviewed and what is the best way to submit. One of the questions has been if I usually submitted one to the county executive for 30,000 and one to the council grants for 30,000, was I'm hoping to get 60,000. What we're asking now is for you to submit one application for 60,000 so that it's clear to everyone who's reviewing what your actual need is. Okay. Yes. So the next question is, are grants available for new programs? So yes, let me just go back to this. Okay, so what's changing this year is that we are increasing the categorization of programs. So the question was, what if you're a new program? What if you're a new organization? How is that going to be reviewed? So number one, we have in our application different questions in your first page that will tell us how long your organization has been around since you were established, how long your program has been around, how long your program, if it has been funded by the county executive or the county council or any community grant or any public funds. We're going to ask how long that's been funded, and that way we can then separate and review the applications based on those parameters. So if you are a new organization and you have a $10,000 budget and you've only got 1 year of results data, you will be reviewed against similar organizations of your budget size and your track record of your program. This does, in effect, allow for more funds to be available for new programs and new organizations, because then you can be more competitive in your own peer group than if you were being reviewed against, $10 million organization. Great. Next question is, can an organization submit multiple applications for funding for different programs? Yes, you can absolutely do that. The way that you can, so right here it says, let me just make sure everybody understands. When we said here that, Okay, one application per program. This is what we need to remember. One application for your program will give access for that program to all community grants funds. The question here is, can my organization submit multiple programs? Yes, and the way that you can determine whether your organization warrants that is if your programs have different outcomes that you measure. If two programs have the same outcomes, it sounds to me that would be more of one program with multiple sites. If you have a seniors program where you measure outcomes relating to seniors or aging, and you have another program which is food insecurity for a hunger program or homeless housing for the homeless, those are different outcomes, and they would be different programs. So you do need to link the number of applications that you submit to different outcomes, so different measurements of success. With that said, if you are a small organization with a small budget, so that can be anywhere like 500,000 or below, usually when we get down to it, you really should be applying just one application for your organization versus multiple programs within your organization, because if you split it up, your budgets will be smaller and not as strong as if you consolidate. So again, if you have any questions on how many you should submit, please make a meeting, schedule a meeting with me so we can go over it. Okay, next, is there a limit for reimbursable expenses? So no, there is no minimum or maximum right now on the amount that your organization can apply for. That will change in the future, but for now, what's important is that your ask makes sense against your program budget, and your program budget makes sense against your organizational budget. There's no max or minimum per se, but there is a median to average grant amount that's given per organization to 30 to 35,000. So there is somewhat of a range, even though we don't have a minimum or a maximum limit. Okay, great. So this question is specific for an organization. It is an alumni foundation. They wanted to know whether you'd be eligible to apply for a grant if you did not directly administer an eligible program. Instead, you secure funds for nonprofits in the county for service projects. So you would fall underneath the category of somewhat of an umbrella organization, or an organization that does not provide a direct service to a particular client. Those organizations, which we will see when when we read your application, you will be reviewed separately in a different category with other organizations that do not provide direct service. So you are technically you can apply if you meet all the criteria to submit your application, but your program will be reviewed a little bit differently because you aren't providing a direct service. And in general, the community grants program is more geared for direct service in order to plug the gaps in the county. Next question, is priority given to nonprofits based in Montgomery County? No. If you are based in Montgomery County or you are based in another state, there's no priority based on that. It is based on who you serve in the county and where. So it matters geography-wise where you serve, how many people you serve, who you're targeting, how successful your program is. We do not require the nonprofits to be headquartered in the county itself. We realize that other organizations, surrounding organizations in DC and Virginia, Prince George's, and Baltimore serve county residents for particular services. The next question is, are grants restricted to 501c3s or LLCs eligible? The grants are restricted to 501c3s. You must be a registered nonprofit with the IRS. You must be tax exempt. LLCs would be a company, and you would not be eligible. Okay, there's a question here on how long this webinar will be. We'll be going on until 1. Where can volunteers apply online? If you want to be a volunteer with the Grants Advisory Group, just email me. Next question. Can we request funds for training as well as site improvements for our training space in one application, or do you recommend separate applications? So it sounds like this question is about a capital expense, whether or not you can apply funds for upgrades in your capital expense versus for your program. They are a capital expense for an upgrade in your infrastructure would definitely be a separate application versus your program because it's a different outcome, right? So your program has outcomes you measure specific to the services. A capital expense outcome is very much yes, you built it, or no, you didn't build it. And also capital expenses are reviewed by myself, Josh, over the county executive, and approved by the Health and Human Services Committee. So it does not go through a citizen review. So if you are thinking about a renovation project or a capital expense, please meet with me so that we make sure we present your application in the strongest way possible. Next question, what do you mean by using a racial lens in delivering services? So this has been definitely a good question that has come up in every workshop, and just to make sure we're all on the same page, this is what this question is referencing, that our priority is to grant organizations that have these minimum requirements. This in itself is always how our program has run. We've never listed it out this specifically, and we now know we needed to in order for organizations to understand how we're reviewing applications. So if your mission has either an element of racial equity in it, such as narrowing the achievement gap, or getting access to a particular population to sign up for affordable health care because they don't have access or they don't have the language ability. If your mission lends that already racial equity lens when you deliver services, you don't have anything to worry about. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that if you serve a particular specific population, are you doing that with cultural proficiency, whether it's language or culture, understanding where to reach these particular people, and are you using this lens of it is not equal on who gets access to this particular service versus somebody else. That's important if it's part of your mission. If it is not part of your mission, it should not be part of your application that this is something that you do. There are not all programs that need to use a racial equity lens in order to show that they work. Again, this is new in terms of identifying it, so please meet with me to get any of your questions answered on this end. Okay, question here is, when you submit your application through Fluid Review, how do you name your application? So you will name it with your org name -FY20. This is for the 20 cycle. You no longer need to indicate whether it's a county council or a county executive grant. So no CC or CE. If you guys knew what I'm talking about, then if you don't, that means you haven't applied before, so that's okay. And then if you're applying for multiple programs, please describe what kind of program as opposed to putting 1, 2, or 3. Please describe if it's a youth development program, as seniors, a food program, and that way it's easier for us to identify. Okay. Next question is, if you've previously received funds from the county, do you use the same login and password as last year's application, or do you make a new account? Yes, you should use the same login and password as last year's application, or if you've changed the people that is responsible, I can go into the system and change the ownership of your application. That can be done too. Just give me a call. But yes, you should use the same login and passwords last year because your applications that were submitted last year are linked to your name specifically. The next question is, are you likely to fund a renewal expansion of the same project, or more likely prefer to fund something new? So this is something that we no longer want to be part of the application process, is that people will submit projects that they think are more likely to get funded. What we're trying to do is equalize that. We need to know from the nonprofit community what the landscape is. So we need to know whether it's going to be, what do you need to deliver the current services that you have? What do you need to deliver the services with this program that you want for next year? perhaps you have more goals that you want to reach. What's that number? And then is there another program within your organization that hasn't been funded in the past, but it's something that is part of your mission that you also want to get a review for as well? That's going to be separately reviewed. The reason why is the only way that we are going to get new applications, whether it's new organizations or new programs of current organization, is whether or not we make sure that it's not in competition with programs that have been funded multiple years. So there's no preference. It's going to be based on how many people apply under each category, not program area, but category. What's your size? How many people do you serve? How much is your program budget? How many years of data do you have? How long has this been funded by public funds or county funds? And then we will review based on outcomes and impact that your application presents as being evaluative factors. Okay, next question. The application requests the year that the IRS issued 501c status. Are you looking for the original issue year or the year associated with the most recent confirmation letter from the IRS? Okay, we are looking for the issue year. That tells us how long that you have been considered tax exempt from the IRS, whether there's a renewal or a confirmation or you lapsed. That's a whole nother question. We'd like to know when you were first issued the 501c3 status, and the next question after that would be, how long were you incorporated? So when did you incorporate yourself in the particular state you're incorporated, and how long have you been in good standing? So lots of different dates we're looking for, but they are all distinct. Next question is, in the past, we have submitted our audit. It will not be finalized by January 15th. However, should we submit last year's audit or should we submit our current end of year financials? Okay, even though they're not audited. So if your organization has audited financials, that's great. You should submit the last complete audited financials that you have. And then anything that's projected or not final, you can submit as a projected or forecasted or organizational budget or financial statement. That's fine. We do not require audited financial statements. So the most recent year that's complete is the most relevant to us. But if you do have an audited financial statement for 2 years prior, that's really great too, because it gives us a sense of how you're structured. Next question, is the funding of staff delivering the services part of the 10% administrative cost? No. So staff time, let's say you're paying someone an hourly rate for 20 hours a week, that's the staff time that you're paying that contractor. That contractor then has to pay their own taxes on that when they report. But the 10% administrative cost, whether you use that as administrative overhead admin cost of your organization or fringe benefits, which actually wouldn't be if it's an hourly person, but it is separate. So what we want to do is give that guidance of the extra 10% of administrative costs that perhaps you either have included in your budget or not. We just don't want people putting a wide range of numbers that isn't justified through documentation, so that it doesn't negatively affect your application. What we don't want is for people to go into an interview and be asked questions on their administrative costs that could be 30% for whatever reason, as opposed to asking questions specific to your outcome and budgets. That makes sense. Okay, next question. You need to see the operational budget, which is the entire organization's budget, total program. This is what we are showing to be funded, but you only want to fund a % of the program. Okay, so yes, we are looking to see, so we don't fund complete organizations. So, in your program, if you are a $50,000 organization and you need $50,000 to run, this isn't the right funding source for you for that full $50,000. What we're looking for are leveraged funds for your programs. So if your organizational budget is $100,000, your program is $30,000, and you're asking for a $10,000 grant to leverage your $30,000 program, that's what these community grants are for, because they're taxpayer dollars. So yes, we do only want to see a percentage of the program that you're funding. And usually what I have found is that the reason why applicants have submitted full amounts of their budget is because they didn't understand that you need to show the entire picture. So it's not that you were trying to ask for the entire part of your budget, you just didn't know how to present it. So I would suggest, again, if you have any questions on that, please sit with me and I can review your budget with you. Okay, next question is, are the priorities as you listed them for both council and executive grants the same? So yes and no. Let me show you this. If you guys have gone to the here we go, county executive website, he has his outcomes and indicators already listed here. There are 7 priority outcomes and measures. He has the outcome indicators that he'll be using for each of his areas. He's already posted this through his campaign as well as in his new administration. We are, for now, using this as our baseline when we talk to his team. But you'll see it's very broad but specific in the outcomes. So our council priorities actually fit within the county executive's priorities as well. So they're not terribly different because his are very all-encompassing. What is interesting about this process now that I like is that we actually have outcome indicators that we can use for each of these priority areas that the Elbridge administration is planning to focus on. Okay. Next question. Would you consider proposals focusing on racial equity and systems change that are not directly aligned with the 3 emphasis areas you showed? Yes. So what I need to say again, because I know this has been an issue, is that this is your eligibility to apply. We are not focusing on specific program areas only. Anyone can apply if you generally do this and you generally have the documentation. So yes, it's very important to know that any program can still apply. If you have a specific program that hits one of these priority areas, whether it's disconnected youth, education and workforce, seniors, or climate change, that's great. We just want to call that out as proposals that we want to take a closer look at, and we want to categorize them differently. But by all means, we're not expecting all 400 applications to be only these 4 categories. We wouldn't want that. Okay, let's keep going. Almost done, you guys. 6 more minutes. Okay. Can you share which areas of the county are priority for reimbursable expenses? So we don't have a priority on what type of expenses are more reimbursable or fundable than others. What is very important is to be able to document what your projected program budget is against prior year financials. That's really what's going to be your competitive advantage when you're presenting your application. It isn't that we'd rather fund a particular expense over another. I already said that we do want to fund typically more staff people that provide the direct service versus your administrative fixed costs, such as your rent or your utilities. That's always tough for us to justify, because if you are not paying your rent or utilities on your own fundraising efforts, we wonder how long you'll be sustainable. So what's really important is to be able to submit a program budget that has expenses that are linked to your outputs and outcomes, so that if we give you partial of the funds that you ask, it should be directly linked to what you're able to produce on the outputs and outcomes side. So that's what I would say would be the priority in your program budget. Next question, how many volunteers will review each application? We have 3 volunteers that will review each set of applications and 1 lead. So in your panel, when you come into interview for 15 minutes, it should be 4 people. Myself, I'll be a lead. There's 2 other leads, and then there should be 3 review panelists that are there reviewing the application and asking you follow-up questions. Those 3 reviewers need to all agree to fund and to recommend your program. Okay. There's a question here about the steps that will take place between February and April. You will be contacted by me through email on when your 15-minute or 30-minute interview is, depending on how many programs that you applied for are in. You will then come in between the last 2 weeks of February and the 4 weeks in March. April will be a review period for the reviewers, so you won't be coming in April. So please keep your schedule open in second half of February and March in order to come in for your interview for clarifying questions on your application. Okay, just 2 more questions and then we'll be done. Next question, if you're not currently registered in the central vendor process. Okay, so what this person is talking about is when you receive a grant, you will need to be a registered vendor. This is the CVRS system. It's a central vendor registration system. That's our entire countywide system where anyone who has a contract with the county is registered in the system, and this is how funds are distributed. So this is not specific to community grants. This is anything. You do not need to be registered in this system while you apply. Not at all. The registration does not take a terribly long time. You need a W-9, and you have to fill out direct deposit form for any fund reimbursable expenses to be sent to a bank account, but you don't need to register before the application at all. And final question is, when the application asks how many years your organization has been implementing the program for which we are requesting funding, should we answer how many years we've been implementing in Montgomery County or as an organizational overall? Okay, great question. So in the application, when you download, and let me just show this so that everybody can see what I'm talking about. When you go to this website and you download the template, let's do the word template. When you click on this, you'll download this. This is where you can see all the questions before you submit them online. And this is where the demographic info in the first set of questions before we even get to the numbers, there's 13 questions starting with number 1 here on page 5. But in the beginning, this is all the demographic information that we're collecting. So I'd like to know everything we talked about on this call. We want to know how much this funding request is for, how much this total program, what's your organizational budget. That's the stuff about the program. But I also want to know, are you a first-time applicant? How many years has your organization been implementing this program? This question is how long your organization, regardless of public funds, has been implementing this program. So if you've been around for 15 years and you've been running your program for 10 years, this is where you put 10. This is where you're going to tell us if this program has been funded by a county executive or county council grant. So 10-year programs been funded for 7 years by the county executive and county council. You'll click this box and then you'll tell us here how many years, and that would be 7. So hopefully that makes sense. And we're actually at the end of our questions. And we've got 1 minute left. So I just wanted to thank everybody so much for sticking through this 1 hour. And hopefully I got all your questions answered. Again, it's very, very important that you meet with me. This is what it looks like. I just want to click on this. This is the link. And this is what it looks like if you want to meet with me. You'll be able to see my actual schedule and the spaces I have in between. 27th and 28th look open. And then you can request directly through this website up here where you want me to meet you and your name and organization, and I will get the request and I will confirm or ask you for additional times. This is the best way to get your questions answered. Phone is good too, but it's probably better just to meet in person. Okay, great. It's 1 o'clock now, and thank you so much. If you have any questions, again, email me or call me or request a meeting. Thank you so much, and please have a good rest of the day, everybody. Bye.